The ground beneath Babylon shook 33 times in a single decade. Not metaphorically, geologically. And in the middle of that trembling earth, a man named Daniel watched an empire that had swallowed the known world begin to crack from the inside. Not from invasion, not from famine, not from the failure of its armies, but from something far more precise and far more disturbing. A hand appeared and wrote on a wall. That detail has been repeated so many times that most people no longer hear it. They hear the phrase, they don't hear what it cost. They don't hear the silence in that banquet hall after every voice stopped. They don't hear what it means that the most powerful man alive in 539 before the Common Era looked at his own hand, looked at the wall, and understood at the cellular level, before the interpreter even spoke, that something had just ended. The conventional reading says this is a story about pride, about Belshazzar drinking from the sacred vessels of Jerusalem's destroyed temple, defiling what was holy, and being punished for it. That reading is not wrong, but it is incomplete in a way that changes everything. Because the text of Daniel 5 contains a word that virtually no English translation renders with its full weight. And when you see what that word actually means in the Aramaic, the story stops being about one king's arrogance on one particular night. It becomes something that has been running like a current beneath every civilization that ever believed its own permanence. The word is mene. The inscription on the wall was 4 words: mene, mene, tekel, upharsin. Daniel translates them in verses 26 through 28. Mene, God has numbered your kingdom and brought it to an end. Tekel, you have been weighed on the scales and found wanting. Upharsin, your kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and Persians. Most study Bibles stop there. The translation is accurate, but it does not go deep enough into what these 4 words are and why they were chosen. Mene in Aramaic comes from the root mena, which means to count, to number, to appoint. But this root does not simply mean to tally a figure. In the ancient Semitic world, to number something was an act of completion. You counted what was finished. You numbered the harvest after it was gathered, not while it was still in the field. The Hebrew parallel, the root mana, carries the same weight. It appears in Psalm 90 when Moses writes, "Teach us to number our days," not as a mathematical exercise, but as a confrontation with finitude. To be numbered was to be concluded. Now consider what Daniel's Aramaic reveals when you look at the structure of the inscription itself. Mene appears twice, not once. The doubling in Semitic literature is never decorative. It is intensification towards certainty. When the same root is repeated, the ancient reader understands this as sealed, unalterable, beyond appeal. Mene, mene is not God has counted. It is God has counted and counted again, and the count is closed. There is no petition left. The verdict is not pending. The books are shut. This changes the entire emotional architecture of the scene. Belshazzar was not watching a warning being written. He was watching a conclusion being announced. The Aramaic tekel comes from the root tekal, meaning to weigh, to measure against a standard. And here, the extra-canonical literature becomes extraordinarily illuminating. The Book of the Watchers, preserved in 1 Enoch and known to the community at Qumran, fragments of which were recovered among the Dead Sea Scrolls in Cave 4, develops at length the image of cosmic scales on which the deeds of nations and rulers are measured. The Qumran community, writing in the 1st and 2nd centuries before the Common Era, treated this imagery as live theology, not metaphor. They believed the scales were real, that the measurement was ongoing, and that the moment of weighing was the moment of irreversible accountability. When Daniel uses tekel for Belshazzar, he is reaching into a theological vocabulary his Jewish audience understood at depth, not a poetic image, but a cosmic forensic event. Josephus, writing in his Antiquities of the Jews in the 1st century of the Common Era, records that Belshazzar's feast occurred on the very night Cyrus the Great's generals diverted the Euphrates River and entered Babylon through the riverbed beneath the city walls. Josephus notes, drawing from earlier Babylonian sources, including Berossus, that the city's population was so large and the walls so formidable that the outer districts of Babylon did not even know the city had fallen until morning. The king was dead, the dynasty was over, and inside the palace, the river was still running, or so they thought.
The archaeological record confirms the abruptness of Babylon's end under Belshazzar. The Nabonidus Chronicle, a cuneiform tablet now housed in the British Museum, describes Cyrus entering Babylon in October of 539 before the Common Era, without a battle at the city proper. Belshazzar is referred to in Babylonian documents as the son of Nabonidus, serving as co-regent, and his absence from the primary kingship in these records has historically led some scholars to question his historicity entirely. But the discovery of the Nabonidus cylinder and administrative tablets from the city of Sippar confirmed that Belshazzar functioned as acting king in Babylon, while his father campaigned elsewhere. The text of Daniel 5 is not mythology. It is embedded in a documented political arrangement that archaeology has now verified. And this is where the story stops being ancient and begins pressing against the present moment in a way that should be uncomfortable. Every system that has ever called itself permanent has built its permanence on the same assumption Babylon built, that its complexity was its protection. Babylon was not merely powerful, it was interconnected in a way that seemed to make it too large to fail. The Euphrates ran through the city. The economy of the ancient Near East passed through its gates. Cyrus could not simply destroy Babylon. Babylon was too load-bearing. And yet, the river was diverted in a single night by an engineering decision, and what had seemed structurally impossible became operationally simple. The ancient world did not have a term for systemic risk, but the theological vocabulary of Daniel 5 describes it with a precision that is almost clinical. Upharsin, the kingdom is divided. Peres, in the singular, split and redistributed. The Aramaic root peres means to break apart, to divide, to allocate to others what was once unified. In a single word, Babylon goes from empire to a state. Its assets liquidated, its territories partitioned, its identity dissolved into the administrative categories of its successors. What is remarkable is not that Babylon fell. Empires fall. What is remarkable is that the mechanism of the fall was already contained in the character of the king, long before the night of the feast. Daniel tells Belshazzar something that the king already knew, but refused to process. He knew what happened to Nebuchadnezzar. Verse 22 is devastating in its simplicity. You, his son Belshazzar, have not humbled your heart, although you knew all this. The Aramaic verb for knew there is yeda, and it implies experiential knowledge, not merely intellectual awareness. Belshazzar had watched. He had seen Nebuchadnezzar reduced to eating grass in the field. He had seen the restoration. He had the evidence. He chose the vessels anyway. This is the theological anatomy of the Mene moment, and it is not limited to ancient Mesopotamia. The pattern the text describes is the pattern of any individual, any institution, any culture that accumulates knowledge of consequence and then insulates itself from the implications of that knowledge through the performance of its own greatness. The feast is not the sin. The feast is the symptom. The vessels from Jerusalem's temple were not just objects, they were memorials of a God who had already demonstrated in the destruction of that same temple that he did not protect institutions on the basis of their history or their sophistication. Belshazzar used the sacred to decorate his certainty, and the hand appeared. There is something in the structure of Daniel 5 that the English reader almost always misses because it requires the Aramaic to surface. When the hand writes and Belshazzar's face changes, the text says his thoughts troubled him. The Aramaic is rayon, from the root meaning to think, to imagine, to project forward. His imagination collapsed. Not his courage, not his military assessment, his imagination. He could no longer picture a future. The hand on the wall did not destroy Babylon. It destroyed Belshazzar's capacity to conceive of tomorrow.
And Daniel, brought in before a king who is already internally undone, does something that should stop every reader cold. He declines the gifts. Verse 17, keep your gifts for yourself, or give them to someone else. Daniel has no interest in being incorporated into the reward system of the empire whose ending he is about to announce. He speaks from outside the economy of Babylon. He cannot be purchased. He cannot be silenced by promotion. This is not incidental. It is the text showing you what a voice outside the numbering system looks like. Daniel is already living in a different accounting. The question the text leaves open is not what happened to Babylon. History answers that. The question is, what is being numbered that you have not yet allowed yourself to count? What is being weighed in scales you have been avoiding? Because the mene of Daniel 5 does not only describe the end of ancient kingdoms, it describes the precise moment when the count closes on anything that has mistaken its own structure for its source. That moment can come quietly. It can come in the middle of a feast. It can come when every visible indicator says the system is running. The river beneath Babylon was already diverted before anyone inside the palace heard the sound of it changing. What has changed in you that the noise of your own certainty is covering? Leave in the comments the one word from Daniel 5, mene, tekel, or peres, that lands most heavily on you right now, and say why. The answers in those comments are going to be worth reading. In the next video, we go inside the book of Enoch's account of the Watchers, the pre-flood figures whose story the New Testament writers knew, quoted, and then the church spent centuries trying to make you forget. That one goes deep. Do not miss it.